Douglas grabbed my wrist as I stood up from the table. His grip wasn't forceful, just firm enough to say, "Don't," as if he still had the right to stop me, as if, after everything he'd just said, he could still control the narrative. I looked at him, eyes steady, then peeled his fingers off my skin one by one. "Don't touch me. Not today." I walked toward the kitchen in complete silence. No one said a word. The only sounds were the soft hum of the refrigerator and the tick, tick, tick of the antique wall clock my mother left me. The turkey still steamed in the center of the table. The stuffing was untouched. My daughter's wine glass trembled in her hand. On the counter, next to the tin of butter cookies Anna had brought home from Seattle, was my purse. I reached in and pulled out a cream-colored envelope. Thick, sealed. My handwriting on the front, Douglas. It had been in that purse for 3 weeks, just waiting for the right moment. I returned to the dining room. Cole and Anna watched me, wide-eyed like I'd grown a second head. Douglas was still standing, frozen in place behind his chair, the hand I had just brushed away now hovering awkwardly by his side. I placed the envelope right in front of his plate, right on top of the cranberry sauce stain from his little speech. "Since we're making announcements," I said quietly, locking eyes with the man I'd been married to for 23 years. Then I sat down, picked up my fork, and took a bite of sweet potato casserole. It tasted like ash, but I chewed it anyway. I refused to let him see me shaken. Anna set her wine glass down harder than she meant to. The clink echoed through the room. Cole hadn't moved at all. His jaw was tight. His eyes flicked from me to his father, to the envelope, and back again. Douglas, the same man who had just announced that he was selling our home for his girlfriend and her 3 kids, now stared at the envelope like it might explode. His lips were slightly parted. His confidence, so smug just minutes ago, had evaporated. 10 minutes earlier, the room had been filled with warmth. Laughter, roast turkey, the familiar clatter of plates and silverware. Anna was teasing Cole about his haircut. Cole was bragging about his new promotion in Chicago. I was passing the rolls. Douglas was on his phone. As always, he barely looked up. Didn't comment on the centerpiece I'd spent 2 hours arranging. Didn't notice that I'd used the fine china, the one that only came out for Thanksgiving and Christmas. I should have known, but I still hoped. God help me, I still hoped. Then he stood up, cleared his throat, and said it. "I'm selling the house." Just like that. No warning. No apology. No shame. "Holly and the kids need more space," he added, like he was explaining a business merger. "Jack is 8 now. Joel is 6. And little Rosie just turned 4. Her apartment's too small." That's when I stood up. That's when he reached for my wrist. That's when I realized this man wasn't my husband anymore, and I wasn't his wife. It started in March, a Tuesday if I remember right, the kind of gray, unremarkable day that shouldn't change your life, but does. Douglas came home nearly 3 hours late. He claimed a client meeting had run over, some last-minute presentation emergency, but there was a wrinkle in his shirt collar, a scuff on his shoe, and that look, the one where his eyes slide past you like they're looking for an exit. I microwaved his dinner. He ate in silence. I asked about his day. He mumbled something forgettable. He kissed my cheek. I pretended I didn't notice how quickly he disappeared into the shower, but the pattern began there. Late nights, canceled plans, don't wait up. I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening for the sound of his car pulling into the driveway. Midnight, 1, 2 a.m., sometimes not at all. And every time I asked, gently, lovingly, patiently, he sighed like I was accusing him of a crime. "It's work, Marissa. You know how demanding this quarter's been." Yes, I knew. I knew how demanding lies can be. April came. Our anniversary came. 23 years. 23 years of laughter and bills and raising babies and fighting about laundry and making up in quiet, familiar ways. I made a reservation at our favorite restaurant, the Oak Room. confirmed twice. Wore the black dress he used to love. At 6:15 p.m., I got the text, can't make it. Client crisis. Let's reschedule. There was no happy anniversary. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there by the door in my heels and coat, staring at the wall until my legs hurt. Then I walked into the kitchen, uncorked the good wine, and drank alone. But I still wasn't ready to believe it. Not until the pictures. The first one came by accident. I picked up his phone to check the weather while mine was charging. It was open to the photo album, and there she was, Heather Monroe. In the picture, she's laughing. Blonde, younger than me, obviously. Her hand rests lightly on Douglas's arm. 3 children surround them. 2 boys, 1 little girl with pigtails and a pink bow. They're at a park. Our park. The one where I used to push Anna on the swings while Cole climbed the jungle gym. I recognized the bench. The timestamp said Saturday. Douglas had told me he was playing golf with Marcus. I confronted him that night. Calmly. I showed him the photo. Asked who they were. Oh, that's Heather from work. She's going through a nasty divorce. Those are her kids. I took them out to give her a break. Poor things, they've been struggling. Just trying to help. It rolled off his tongue too easily, and I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to believe him. But his fingers twitched when he took the phone back. He deleted the photo instantly. No hesitation. After that, the signs weren't just signs, they were alarms. Receipts from restaurants we'd never been to. Grocery store purchases at 8 p.m. when he was working late. A $400 charge at a children's boutique. And the way he flinched every time Heather's name lit up his screen. Still, I didn't explode. I didn't leave. I took notes. Because while Douglas was playing house with another woman, I was preparing for war. I hired a lawyer, Clayton Richards. Not just any lawyer, the divorce lawyer in Savannah. He had that old Southern charm, silver hair, sharp eyes. When I handed him the folder of photos, receipts, timelines, he raised an eyebrow and said, "Mrs. Langley, you've been busy." I smiled. Not nearly busy enough. We met twice a week, always during Douglas's networking events. I transferred ownership of the house into my name. Fully legal, fully clean. It had originally been a gift from my parents, so the process was simple once I knew where to start. By October, everything was ready, except the confrontation. That would come later, when it would hurt the most. So I waited. I made stuffing. I lit candles. I put out the fine china. I set the table for one final illusion of family. And I waited for the man I married to reveal himself as the stranger he'd already become. After that October night, the night Douglas skipped our anniversary for one of Heather's imaginary breakdowns, I stopped hoping. I stopped waiting for apologies. Stopped checking the clock. Stopped asking questions I already knew the answers to. I became quiet, precise, focused. Douglas thought I was distancing, that I was hurt, fragile, retreating into myself. He didn't realize I was documenting, mapping, calculating. He thought he had all the power because I wasn't screaming. But screaming is for people who still want to be heard. I didn't want to be heard anymore. I wanted to be done. The first thing I did was open a new bank account, one Douglas didn't know about. I started rerouting all of my small income streams, my Etsy shop earnings, private wellness consultations, even the $200 my aunt sent every December like clockwork into that account. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Then came the paperwork. The house had been a wedding gift from my parents. Back then, we'd filed everything jointly out of trust and tradition. But legally, the deed could be revised. Clayton handled it seamlessly. One signature, a notary, some filing with the county records office. And just like that, Douglas no longer owned the house he was so eager to sell. He had no idea. Every time he walked through the front door, tossing his keys on the hall table like he owned the world, I would look at him and think, "You're standing on ground that doesn't belong to you anymore." It gave me peace and power. Clayton advised me to keep everything quiet. Let him build his fantasy, he said. Let him promise things he can't deliver. The fall will be sharper. So I did. I let him take calls from Heather in the kitchen, thinking I wasn't listening. I let him text her while we sat at the dinner table, right across from our children. I let him make plans, school districts, furniture shopping, weekend getaways. He was building a life on sand, and I was watching the tide roll in. One night in early November, I overheard him on the phone in his office. The door was cracked just enough. Yes, baby. I know. I'll talk to her soon. She won't make this difficult. She's not that type. That was when I decided the confrontation would happen at Thanksgiving. Not to be cruel, not to humiliate, but because he chose that day. He chose to announce his betrayal on a day meant for gratitude, surrounded by the family he was discarding. He chose the spectacle. All I did was give it a stage. So I prepared the meal. I made his favorite cranberry sauce from scratch. I ordered a new table runner. I polished the silver. I welcomed Cole home from Chicago with a warm hug and cinnamon rolls. I complimented Anna's haircut and stocked the fridge with her favorite oat milk. I played the part. One last time. And that morning, Thanksgiving morning, I woke up before sunrise, made coffee, took a deep breath, and slipped the envelope into my purse. Clayton had printed everything on embossed letterhead, as if it were an invitation to a gala. Ownership documents, timeline of financial transfers, witness statements should we need them later, a note from the bank confirming that Douglas's name had been removed from every legal claim to the property. The only thing left was to wait for him to open it, but I knew he wouldn't. Not right away. Men like Douglas never open the envelope. They feel the weight of it, the threat of it. They carry it around like it might detonate. They touch it, shift it from pocket to drawer. They fear it in a way they never feared you when you cried. But it always opens eventually. And when it does, everything changes. It took him 6 days. 6 days of pacing past the envelope. 6 days of sneaking glances when he thought I wasn't looking. He kept it in his jacket pocket at first, then moved it to his nightstand drawer, then back to the kitchen counter, like he couldn't decide if it was safer hidden or in plain sight. He didn't ask me about it. Not once. I didn't bring it up either. I watered the plants, took long walks, made butternut squash soup from scratch, folded laundry while humming. It was killing him. Thursday morning, exactly 1 week after Thanksgiving, he came down the stairs slowly. I was flipping pancakes in the kitchen. He looked disheveled, eyes bloodshot, shirt wrinkled, that same envelope clutched in his hand like it might burn a hole through him. "Marissa," he said, barely above a whisper. "What is this?" I didn't turn around, open it, and find out. I could hear the paper tearing, the rustle of thick pages being unfolded. Then silence, long, heavy, absolute. When I finally turned, he was staring at the documents like they were in another language. "You transferred the deed," he said. His voice cracked on the last word. I nodded, casual. 3 months ago. His mouth opened, then closed. He looked completely gutted. You can't just—" "I can," I said, setting the spatula down with care. And I did. Douglas staggered back a step, like the weight of the truth had finally landed. "You set me up." "No," I said calmly. I protected myself. There's a difference." He ran a hand through his thinning hair. "I told Heather we'd close in January. We've already started talking about paint colors, backyard renovations, school enrollment." I raised an eyebrow. "Then you'd better call her." Right on cue, his phone rang. We both looked at the screen. Heather. He hesitated, then answered. "Hey, babe." I could hear her voice through the speaker, sharp, demanding. "Any updates on the paperwork? The kids are excited about their new rooms. I already ordered a bunk bed set for the boys. You said everything was ready." Douglas's eyes flicked to me in panic. I gave him nothing. Just a sip of coffee and a polite, almost amused look. There's been a complication, he stammered. Silence. What kind of complication? Well, it turns out the house isn't technically in my name anymore. More silence. What do you mean, not in your name? It's your house. He looked at me helplessly, like I might rescue him. I didn't. Marissa transferred the deed, he said eventually, without telling me. The shriek on the other end could have shattered glass. You promised me a home. You told me this was ours. Words like liar, useless, wasted time, and you're no better than my ex exploded from the phone in rapid succession. Then the call dropped. Douglas stood there, blinking, phone in hand, as the full collapse of his fantasy echoed through the air. She hung up, he said dumbly. I gave him a tight smile. Imagine that. His phone buzzed again, 3 messages in a row. I didn't need to read them. I could see it in his face. Whatever plans he had with Heather were over. He sank into the nearest chair, burying his face in his hands. Then he looked up, voice raw. You destroyed everything with paperwork. That's when I snapped. I turned fully to face him. No smile this time. I destroyed everything. My voice was calm, controlled, sharper than any scream. You stood at our table on Thanksgiving and announced you were selling my home to make room for your girlfriend and her 3 kids. You betrayed our family. You humiliated our children. But sure, let's talk about how I destroyed everything with a signature. He didn't speak, and for once he listened. After Heather vanished from his life like smoke through a broken window, Douglas spiraled. He started coming home earlier, but not to talk. He barely spoke at all. Sometimes he'd linger in the kitchen like he wanted to say something, but didn't. His shoulders stayed hunched. His eyes never met mine. He walked through the house like a ghost, unsure of his place. But I wasn't afraid of his silence. I'd lived with worse. A few weeks later, I overheard Anna on the phone with her brother. I think he's trying to win her back, she whispered. He told Cole he wants to prove to Heather he can provide for her family. And he mentioned trying for a baby together. I nearly laughed out loud. A baby? At 52. Oh, Douglas. You forgot, didn't you? 24 years ago, after Anna was born, we'd gone through a rough patch. We'd tried for another baby. Tried and failed. Month after month. Test after test. Until Douglas quietly saw a doctor on his own. I remember the day he came back from the appointment. Said everything was fine. Just stress, nothing to worry about. I believed him, but I never saw the paperwork. Until now. That night, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea and my phone. My fingers hovered over the screen for a long time before I finally called. Dr. Martinez, I said when he picked up. This is Marissa Langley. I need to ask you something, confidential. He paused, kindly but cautious. You know I can't discuss a patient's records. Hypothetically, I interrupted. If a test from over 20 years ago still existed, would it still be on file? Another pause. Hypothetically, he said slowly, medical records are kept for 30 years in this state. If someone were to request them for legal reasons, well, they might find what they're looking for. I didn't smile. I just said thank you and hung up. The next morning, I called Clayton. I need one more favor, I said. Within the week, Clayton's team had subpoenaed Douglas's full medical history as part of the divorce proceedings. Buried among blood tests, cholesterol levels, and prescription records was a single report. Low motility, compromised fertility, severely diminished sperm count, high probability of infertility without clinical intervention. He'd never told me. He'd let me believe it was my body that had failed us. Let me cry alone in bathrooms. Let me feel broken for years. And now, 2 decades later, he was making promises to another woman about children he could never give her. So I waited. I knew Heather had a custody hearing, scheduled the Monday after their planned wedding. In order to move her kids out of state, she needed to prove financial stability, family support, and a clear path to future security. which meant a baby, or at least the potential for one. The timing was too perfect. Clayton's courier delivered the sealed envelope containing the test results to their wedding venue on Saturday morning. Not out of cruelty, just efficiency. I didn't attend the wedding, of course. I had roses to plant. But at 4:30 p.m., my phone rang. Anna, breathless, nearly laughing. "Mom," she said, "you're not going to believe what just happened. Try me. The wedding's off." Heather read some medical documents during her hair appointment, and by the time Dad showed up at the venue, she and the kids were already gone. I closed my eyes and let the sun warm my face. "What a shame," I murmured. Anna was quiet for a beat. "You wouldn't happen to know anything about that envelope, would you?" I sipped my tea. "Your father's medical history is none of my business," I said. "If he chose not to share it with his fiancée, that's between them." I could hear her smiling through the phone. That night, I sat on the front porch of the house Douglas once tried to sell, drinking wine with both my children. We watched the sunset bleed gold across the Savannah sky. Douglas, I imagined, was somewhere alone, staring at a text thread full of rage and disappointment, realizing the life he tried to build on lies had finally collapsed under its own weight. I didn't toast to that. I didn't need to, because the most satisfying victories are the quiet ones. Winter passed slowly that year. Quiet, gentle, the kind of slow that isn't heavy, it's healing. Douglas moved out in January. He took his clothes, his golf clubs, and a few framed photos of himself from the upstairs office. Left everything else behind, like it didn't mean anything. Like 23 years of shared life were just another spreadsheet he could close. The house felt bigger after he left. Not emptier, just clearer. I painted the living room sage green. I swapped the heavy drapes for soft, sheer linen. I turned Douglas's office into a sunroom filled with books and plants and a velvet chair I'd always wanted but never bought because it wasn't practical. Now, everything I did was practical for me. Mornings became mine again. Coffee on the porch. Yoga in the sun. Sometimes I read novels. Sometimes I wrote letters I never sent. Sometimes I just listened to birdsong and let my chest rise and fall without tension. People say healing is loud. Tears, breakdowns, dramatic revelations. But mine was quiet and steady. By March, my little Etsy shop was doing better than it ever had. I started offering wellness coaching sessions through Zoom, mostly for women who, like me, had spent too long asking permission to breathe. One of them called me her lighthouse. I nearly cried. In April, I received an invitation in the mail. Cream cardstock, embossed letters. Cole and Sarah's engagement party. It was to be held at the country club where Cole learned to swim when he was 8. The same place Douglas used to spend Saturday mornings, networking over golf. Full circle. The day arrived with crisp spring air and skies the color of possibility. I wore a navy blue dress that hugged my waist in all the right places, paired with the pearl earrings my mother gave me on my wedding day. But this time I wore them for myself. Cole greeted me at the door with a smile that said, "You're safe. You're honored. You're enough." Sarah hugged me like I was already family. Anna arrived late, as usual, talking a mile a minute, already halfway into a story about a case she'd won. She looked free. Douglas showed up halfway through the cocktail hour. I felt him before I saw him. He looked thinner, older, suit slightly too big. He paused at the entrance, scanning the room like a man unsure if he belonged. And to be honest, he didn't. Cole saw him and walked over. There was no warmth in the hug, just courtesy, boundaries. He introduced Sarah. They spoke politely. Then Anna joined, arms crossed, tone sharp but civil. They weren't cruel, just guarded. Douglas had burned bridges. Now he would have to build them back, one board at a time. If they let him. I watched all of this from across the room with a glass of champagne in my hand. No anger, no satisfaction, just peace. Later, As the sun dipped low over the golf course, I stepped out onto the terrace. The breeze was cool, the sky streaked with gold and rose. Everything felt still. Clayton appeared beside me with 2 flutes of champagne. "You good?" he asked. I took the glass, smiled. "I'm better than good." He nodded. "You look like a woman who's finally breathing again." "I am," I said. "For the first time in years, I am." Inside, I could see Cole and Sarah cutting cake, Anna snapping pictures, Douglas standing off to the side, hands in his pockets, watching the life he used to own move on without him. And I wasn't angry, because the best revenge isn't pain. It's peace. It's planting roses where he left resentment. It's waking up and realizing you don't need closure. You already built your own door. It's watching someone who once made you feel small shrink in the face of your growth. It's being the woman he thought would break and realizing you've bloomed instead. I don't know what comes next, but I know this: I'm not afraid of it. Not anymore.